Hey everybody, this is Angelo Villagomez with the Center for American Progress. I'd like to welcome you back for our second episode of Under the Pala Pala. And today we're back at it, and I'd like to introduce you to two of my friends who work in ocean conservation in Hawaii and California. First, I'd like to introduce you to Mike Coos. Mike is with the Northern Chumash Tribal Council. And Mike, you just say hello to our listeners and give us a little sense of who you are.
Thank you, Angelo. My mother was Khus, rather well known in the Central Coast of California as one of our spiritual leaders and elders, and she passed on a couple of years ago, and I'm carrying on her behalf. In the past, I was also involved in the Chumash occupation at Point Conception when Western Liquefied Natural Gas Corporation attempted to build a LNG plant right there at one of our most sacred places at Humpback, which is near Vandenberg Air Force Base. That was back in the late 1970s.
Thanks, Mike. I want to dive into more about some of that stuff in just a minute, but I'd like to introduce you to our other guest. Saul Kaho'ohalahala is a former state representative from the state of Hawaii. He is the chair of the Humpback National Marine Sanctuary, but we just call him Uncle Saul. So Uncle Saul, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Hi, aloha kako. As Angelo said, I've worn many hats, but I'm currently serving as the chairperson for the Hawaiian Islands Humpback Whale National Marine Sanctuary. And I also have been appointed to be the Native Hawaiian elder for the Papahanaumokuakea National Marine Monument. And I serve also as the Native Hawaiian member to the community group for the Pacific and Remote Islands National Marine Monument. But I think more importantly, I think my work over the last several decades have been in conservation and have worked on my small island home of Lanai. And so what I'd like to do is share some of those experiences with those who have time to sit under the pala pala.
Awesome. And we're here to learn from your experiences. So let's just jump into it. The theme for today's talk is healing and ocean conservation. And Mike, I was reading on the news that you were recently involved in an event around Morro Rock, and I think you're probably better placed to talk about that than I am. So can you tell us about that event and what it meant to you?
Yes, thank you. Reunite the Rock is what we call this event. And the idea for this came from our former chief, Fred Collins, Violet Sagewalker's father. And a few years ago, the Army Corps of Engineers contacted him, and he was very involved in protecting cultural resources and sites in the San Luis Obispo Central Coastal area for many years. Back in 1880 or so, they were blasted away from the volcanic rock and taken by barge to create a breakwater near Avila Beach at Port San Luis. And they've been there ever since. And they contacted him and said, well, we don't really need them anymore. What do you suggest we do with them? And Fred immediately said, well, how about bringing them back where they belong? And some people kind of took that, as a one-off, as kind of lightheartedly, but he meant it. And the Army Corps of Engineers actually took it very seriously, because that rock, which is commonly referred to as Morro Rock now by the mainstream society, we call it Lisamu. And it's a sacred place because it's so prominent right there on the coast. There was a couple of village sites near there in the historic period where Chumash people lived there for thousands of years. But what we do know about Lisamu is that it was a sacred place, and it brought food and life right there on the coast to the people. And it's in the water. And so it was a natural attraction for all kinds of marine life. And the people who lived there prospered because they could fish and they could harvest. So the Army Corps of Engineers, took it seriously, and to their credit, decided to make amends for the destruction of our sacred site, and agreed that they would expedite the return of as many of those boulders and rocks from the breakwater as possible. We decided that we would have a celebration for this. and we would have a ceremonial fire. We would bring our tamals, or famous redwood plank boats, from the Santa Barbara area up to Lisamu, and launch them in the harbor there. And they would be the vessels who would bring back some of these rocks ceremonially to our Lisamu sacred site. And they brought some of the rocks back, and we formed a human chain with all the people that participated, all the people who wanted to come there one by one. Each person could handle each rock, and we returned them right to the foot of Lisamu, where most of the destruction had taken place. And everybody had a big smile on their face that day, because for the first time in 140 years or so, Lisamu was going to be intact. It'll be like Lisamu, again, is fulfilling its original purpose, which is to bring life and food to the people.
Mike, thanks for sharing that. I'd really like to dive in with you in just a minute more about some of the cultural connections of what that like restoration of the physical world and how it relates to the proposed sanctuary. But first, I want to go to Uncle Saul, and I want to ask Uncle Saul if there are any parallels to what he sees in Hawaii with what you're doing in California.
Well, I think I've only recently begun to take a look at the area that Mike is talking about, and seeing that the area that is called Morro Rock is quite a prominent kind of volcanic cap, I guess is what is described as geologically. But the fact that we're talking about rock or stone is a very important in Hawaii. So if you can consider that the Hawaiian culture literally was built on sticks and stones. Before Cook ever stepped foot in the Hawaiian Islands, the Hawaiian culture had already been established and had been really literally built on sticks and stones. As an example, pohaku, as we call it, rock, has many uses as for utilities. It's significant in making tools. Some of the best carving stones that we use are from very dense basalt that are made to be our adzes for the cutting down of timber and hollowing out of canoes. And then you have structures that are made. And as an example, Pi'ilani Hale, which is on the island of Maui, is the largest structure or heiau in the Hawaiian Islands, and it's a platform that is 3 football fields in size that was built with pohaku. Small pohaku, large pohaku assembled together to build a platform that's 350 by 400 feet high. The structure itself, the pohaku is not only looked at as a stone, but the engineering of this structure, it sits almost 60 feet high on its sea-facing slope or incline. And when you look from one corner of the structure to the next, you'll see that it's absolutely straight in its alignment, as though someone was there with some kind of a surveying tool. But other things about pohaku is that pohaku also was given names, and in that names came mana, or mana means the spirit of the people and place. And these were special stones that had very significant religious and sacred kinds of embodiment. And in that case, when mana was placed into a stone, it carried with it the power that was imbued and placed within it. The pohaku, something as inanimate as this might seem, doesn't make it just a piece of rock. As my kupuna or grandfather would say, is that you have to know that if mana is placed into the pohaku, if the spirit is placed into this and it's given its own life or its own spirit, then you need to be able to understand and recognize it and respect that, because that is placed within the pohaku never is extinguished. So for the Chumash, the fact that the pohaku had been removed doesn't mean that the spirit of the place had been removed. So, but to bring it back is to make that spirit whole again, and that's a powerful thing for the Chumash people. So I'm very happy to hear that in an area that needs protection, again, or to being brought back to its cultural significance. That these some of the beginning steps, and perhaps there will be more in the future, to come. But for us, as I said, pohaku is a very important cultural part of our foundation, literally our foundation, and it has with it the mana of the people.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying about the spirit of the rock and the spirit of these, what people would normally think of just an inanimate, and valueless rock or a piece of, of soil or something, and it's sacred. We have these volcanic rocks, and you can feel the heart of Mother Earth, Utash, when we bring them into the sweat lodge, and from the fire, the sacred fire, where we heat these rocks, and we bring them in, and they're beautiful. They're glowing red and sparkling and alive. These rocks that come into our sweat lodge, and our people, go in there to purify ourselves and to pray and to pay respect and give thanks. Sweat lodge is ubiquitous throughout North America as a purification ceremony. And just like, with other indigenous people throughout the world and including Hawaii, we use rock for all kinds of tools and various kinds of weapons to go hunting. So we share many of these cultural values with the indigenous people throughout the world when it came to how rocks were being used.
Sitting on my desk, I actually have a sling stone, sort of like a football shape. This is a stone. This is made out of limestone. And they would use it and throw it at their enemies. Mike, you mentioned stones for tools and for weapons, and I literally have those sitting on my desk with me every day as I write memos about ocean conservation and set meetings.
I know that we have songs about some of our sacred peaks. Throughout the central coast of California, there are several mountain peaks that are sacred to us. Those peaks themselves are alive with spirit and are sacred. So I think that when we bring those rocks back to Lisamo, when those boulders in place are back there, as you were saying just a minute ago, Uncle Saul, they're healing. These rocks heal. We come from the earth, and it only makes spiritual sense that if we want to, purify ourselves and heal ourselves, that we have to return. We have to pay respect to Hutaj, Mother Earth, that gives us everything that we need.
Uncle Saul, I want to build off of what Mike is saying. Many of our cultures have sacred peaks, but my question for you is, living in this modern world, as a Native Hawaiian, as an Indigenous people, what would you tell a young person about their sacred peaks and what they need to do to steward them, or what they can do to steward them?
The largest peak in the Hawaiian Islands is Mauna Kea, and it is considered to be, our sacred mountain. It stands at 14,000 feet above sea level. The mountain represents everything that gives us life on the land. So when we talk about Vau'akua, we're talking about the mountain at its highest, are the part of the land that is reaching up to to the heavens. And so it becomes for us rock or stone that is for the gods. So it's in the realm of the gods. It's there within the midst of the clouds. And for us, Mauna Kea is that kind of place. But as a result of its connection to the heavenly spaces for the gods, we are the recipients of that rock or that mountain, in that the precipitation which comes down in the form of rain that forms around this rock, and then the forests and the land that comes below it creates all of what is sustenance for an island. And then we can see the relationship of the sky to the land, and then working that down from the land to the sea. And then if you take that same principle and then you look below the level of the sea, you'll see that what is here on the land is also replicated below in the sea. And then that in our work in Papahanaumokuakea, as an example, what was assumed to be just the archipelago of the Hawaiian Islands was described as a vast area of ocean and of nothingness. And in the recent deep sea dives in this area of nothingness, what was discovered is that same mountain of the land is found under the sea. And on those mountains under the sea, what was discovered is a great diversity of biocultural resources. And then what we learn now is that on these sea mountains below the surface of the earth are species that have never been found or discovered before. So in our old song, the Kumulipo, that tells us, like Mike has described, that, you know, we're people of the land and sea, that is our story as well. And in that description, it says that we have emerged from the depths of the sea, and we come up from the darkness of the sea to light. And then from there, all creatures moving to the near shores and to the land and to the mountain is all part of what we consider to be our ancestors. And therefore, it gives us now the responsibility to the elders that precede us. So now it ties us from the deepest depths of the ocean to the highest mountains, which are the rock, you know, the pohaku. And so for us, it's real clear that we have this relationship to all things of which we bear responsibility. So when we look at conservation and preservation of places, we cannot separate ourselves from this idea that you know, the sea is separate from the land, and the land is separate from the sky. And in our culture, it's one continuous connection of place. It means that conservation has to not perhaps divide itself from these ideas of marine versus terrestrial, and that we like to impart this idea that comes to us culturally as our responsibility to be connected to all things, so that there's no separation. So we are the keepers of the great rock, the mountain, that is the beginning of the terrestrial part. And then that be reminded that even though we cannot see it, there's a reflection of that under the deep seas. So we cannot separate the fact that the land is connected to the sea. The rocks and the mountains of the sea that can be seen and unseen are no different than the rocks or the mountains of the land that we can see. So we're not just looking at stone as just a piece of rock, you know. So that's why I reminded that bringing your stones back to your place is not just about rock or stone. It's about what is the quality of that is being brought back, and then perhaps restoring that quality to your place, you know. So that's awesome.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said it better.
Mhm.
It's exactly right. It's a healing. It's a healing. And when we heal the rock, we heal Mother Earth Hutash, we're healing ourselves and we're healing all the other life that depends on it.
I think we're gonna have to have a part 2 with you guys. I don't think part 1 was enough. I learned so much from both of you. It's like really, really heartfelt and meaningful. So thank you very much for taking the time.